This episode was produced using AI-generated voices and scripting. Here's what I keep thinking about. We spent decades building up this idea that creative tools are expensive, that the barrier to entry is the price tag, Photoshop licenses, stock photo subscriptions, hiring a designer. And now OpenAI just handed everyone a magic image generator and said, have fun! It's free! Soren, is the price tag actually what was holding people back?
No, and that's the thing everyone's going to get wrong about this story for the next 3 weeks. The barrier was never cost. The barrier was taste. The barrier was knowing what to ask for, and making it free doesn't solve that. It actually makes the taste problem worse, because now everyone's generating images and nobody's curating.
Okay, but let's back up for a second. GPT-4o image generation, this was behind the paywall, right? You needed the $20 a month ChatGPT Plus subscription, and now it's free for everyone.
Right, free tier users, no subscription, just log in and start generating. And the model's actually good, like noticeably better than DALL-E 3 was. It handles text in images. It does stylistic consistency. It can riff on reference images. This isn't some watered-down version they're giving away.
So, why give it away? Because OpenAI is not a charity. They're burning cash at an obscene rate. What's the play here?
This is the oldest move in consumer tech, and people keep acting surprised when it happens. You give away the product to build the user base. You build the user base to collect the data. You collect the data to improve the model, and then you monetize the improved model upstream. Enterprise, API access, premium features nobody's announced yet.
So, we're the product. Again.
I mean, sort of, but it's more nuanced than that. Every prompt someone types is a training signal for what humans actually want from image generation. That's incredibly valuable. Not your personal data in some creepy surveillance way, but the aggregate of millions of people saying, make this look more cinematic. No, not like that. More like this. That preference data,
That's the part nobody talks about.
it never is. Everyone's focused on the output. Look at this cool image I made. And nobody's thinking about the fact that you just gave OpenAI a masterclass in human aesthetic preferences for free.
Alright, let me push on something though. You said the barrier isn't cost, it's taste. But I think there's a counter argument. For a small business owner who needed a quick social media graphic and couldn't afford a designer, this is genuinely useful, right? Like, this actually removes a real friction point for real people.
It does. I'm not going to pretend it doesn't. If you're running a bakery and you need a Valentine's Day Instagram post, and you can just type watercolor hot around a croissant, warm tones, clean layout, and get something decent in 4 seconds, that's transformative for that person. I'll give you that all day.
So what's the problem?
The problem is scale. One bakery owner making one Instagram post is great. 300 million people generating images simultaneously is an ecological event. I don't mean environmentally, although the compute costs are insane. I mean informationally. We're about to drown in generated images. The visual internet is going to get significantly.
And I want listeners to really sit with that for a second. Think about your social media feeds right now. Think about how much of what you see is already generated or heavily filtered. Now, multiply that, because the tool just became free.
Exactly. And here's my first genuinely contrarian take on this. I think making it free actually hurts the people it's supposed to help the most.
Wait, seriously?
Think about it. When AI image generation was behind a paywall, there was a natural filter. The people using it were at least invested enough to pay $20 a month. That meant the average quality of what got generated and shared was higher. It meant when you saw an AI-generated image, there was a decent chance someone had put thought into the prompt. Now, floodgates.
You're making an argument for artificial scarcity.
I'm making an argument for signal-to-noise ratio. There's a difference. When everyone can do something, the thing becomes less valuable. Photography went through this with smartphones. The ability to a photo went from meaningful to ambient. That's what's about to happen with generated images.
Okay, but photography becoming ambient gave us some amazing things. Citizen journalism, documentation of police violence, the entire aesthetic of Instagram culture, for better or worse.
For better or worse, is doing a lot of heavy lifting in that sentence. But fair point. Democratization always has upside and downside. I just think people are only talking about the upside right now, and the downside is coming fast.
Let's talk about the competitive angle, because I think that's actually the more interesting business story. Mid-Journey is still subscription only. Adobe Firefly is integrated into Creative Cloud, which isn't free. Stable Diffusion is open source but requires technical setup. OpenAI just undercut everybody by going to zero.
And this is where it gets strategic. OpenAI is essentially saying image generation is not the product. Image generation is the feature. The product is ChatGPT as a platform. They're bundling image generation into the conversational interface to make ChatGPT stickier, to make it the default tool people open for everything.
The Google playbook: give away the razor, sell the blades.
More like give away the razor, the blades, the shaving cream, the mirror, and then charge you for the bathroom. They want to own the room you do everything in. Image generation is just the latest thing they're pulling into that room.
So, what does Midjourney do? What does Adobe do?
Midjourney has to go harder on quality and community. Their Discord native model actually becomes an advantage here because it's a curated enthusiast space. They're not competing on price anymore. They're competing on being the place serious creators go. Adobe doubles down on integration. Firefly inside Photoshop, inside Illustrator, inside Premiere, professional
Yet.
yet. And that yet should terrify Adobe's board.
I love how casually you just threatened a $300 billion company.
I'm just reading the trajectory. If OpenAI builds a Canvas tool, and they've already got Canvas inside ChatGPT, if they add layers, if they add editing, if they add export workflows, Adobe's got a real problem. Not today, but in 18 months, maybe.
All right, let's talk about something that I think is actually underexplored in this whole conversation: the copyright question. Because when image generation was paid, there was at least an implicit transaction. You're paying for this output, there's some argument about licensing. When it's free, what's the legal status of what you generate?
Murky, extremely murky. The US Copyright Office has been pretty clear that purely AI generated images aren't copyrightable. You can't own something a machine made. But, and this is a big but, if you use AI generated images as part of a larger creative work, the human authored elements might be protectable. So the legal framework is basically
Which means every small business owner using this to make their marketing materials is operating in a legal gray zone.
they are, and nobody's telling them that. The onboarding experience for this tool is type what you want, get a picture. There's no asterisk that says, by the way, you may not legally own this image, and your competitor could use the exact same prompt and get something similar, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Come on, you really think that's a practical concern? Like, is someone gonna sue a bakery because their Valentine's Day post looks like another bakery's?
No, of course not. At the bakery level, it doesn't matter. But at the brand level, at the enterprise level, if a company uses free GPT-4o to generate campaign imagery and can't copyright it, that's a real business problem. And it's a problem that gets worse the more widely adopted the tool becomes.
Here's my second contrarian take, and I want you to push back on this, Soren. I think making this free is actually bad for OpenAI long term.
Okay, go.
They're training the market to expect the most impressive thing in AI to be free. They did it with ChatGPT's text. Now they're doing it with images. At some point, you have to monetize, and you've conditioned hundreds of millions of people to think this stuff doesn't cost anything. That's a trap.
That's a pretty good point. The freemium trap. Spotify has this problem. They've got hundreds of millions of free users, and the conversion rate to paid is, what, maybe 40%, and that's considered a success. OpenAI's conversion rate is going to be way lower because there's no equivalent of no ads to unlock.
Right. With Spotify, free means ads and shuffle. There's a clear reason to upgrade. With ChatGPT, what's the free tier missing now? Higher rate limits? Priority access during peak times? That's not compelling enough for most people.
And this is where I think OpenAI's strategy gets philosophically weird. They're a company that says they're building AGI for the benefit of humanity, but they're structured as a capped profit entity that needs to generate massive returns for investors. Those two things are on a collision course. Giving stuff away for free serves the mission. Charging for stuff serves the investors. Every
And right now, the mission is winning.
Right now, growth is winning, which looks like the mission, but is actually just standard Silicon Valley. Get big fast and figure out monetization later. We've seen this movie before. We know how it ends. Either the price goes up dramatically, or the product gets worse for free users, or both.
I want to pivot to something that I think matters more than the business stuff. And I want you, the person listening to this right now, to think about this honestly. How does it feel to know that the thing a graphic designer spent years learning to do can now be done by anyone typing a sentence into a box?
And I want to be careful here because this is where the conversation usually goes off the rails. People either say AI is going to replace all artists, or they say real art can never be replaced by a machine. Both of those takes are lazy. The truth is more uncomfortable,
Which is?
which is that AI isn't replacing creativity, it replaces execution. The mechanical skills, the technical craft of turning an idea into a visual. That's what's being commoditized. The idea itself, the creative direction, the ability to say, this is what this should feel like. That's still human. But here's the uncomfortable part. A lot of working designers were being paid
So the person doing quick social media graphics for $50 on Fiverr?
is in serious trouble. Yeah, that's just honest. The person art directing a brand campaign, they're fine. Maybe even better off because they can iterate faster with AI tools. At the middle of the market, the execution layer, that's getting compressed
And making it free accelerates that compression.
dramatically. When the tool costs $20 a month, maybe you still hire the Fiverr designer because the subscription feels like an ongoing cost. When the tool is free, there's zero friction to just doing it yourself.
Alright, let me bring up something specific that happened when 4o's image generation first rolled out to paying users. The internet went absolutely feral with Studio Ghibli style images. Everyone was making Ghibli versions of their photos, their pets, their kids. It was everywhere.
Oh, and that's exactly what I'm talking about with the taste problem. The entire internet collectively decided that the most interesting thing to do with a powerful new creative tool was to make everything look like one specific anime studio's aesthetic. That's not creativity. That's a meme.
But people were having fun. Is fun not allowed?
Fun is great. Fun is fine. But let's not call it a creative revolution when everyone's making the same thing. And now that it's free, we're going to see another wave of this, whatever the next viral style is, and there will be one. 300 million people are going to do it simultaneously, and we're all going to pretend it's innovative.
You're being a snob.
Maybe, but I'm a snob with a point. The promise of democratized creative tools was that more people would create more diverse things. The reality is that more people create more of the same thing. Social media incentives drive convergence, not divergence. Free AI image generation plugged into that system is going to produce more homogeneity, not less.
Okay. That's actually a really interesting frame. The tool is more free, but the output is less free.
Because the tool isn't operating in a vacuum. It's operating inside platforms that reward virality, imitation, and trends. The tool doesn't determine what gets made. The distribution system does.
Let me ask you something practical. Should people be excited about this? Like, if you're just a normal person who occasionally needs an image for something, a presentation, a birthday card, a social post, is this good news?
Absolutely. Unambiguously, yes. For the individual user, this is a genuine quality of life improvement. You can make things that look good without any skills or money. That's powerful. My critiques are about the systematic effects, not the individual experience.
So it's good for you, bad for us.
In a nutshell, yeah, good for any one person, potentially problematic for the ecosystem as a whole. That's true of a lot of technology, honestly. Cars are great for you, cars are terrible for cities.
I want to hit on one more thing before we start wrapping up: the safety and moderation angle. OpenAI has been dealing with insane demand. Servers crashing, rate limits, Sam Altman tweeting about GPUs melting, and now they're opening it to everyone. How do you moderate free image generation at scale?
You don't. I mean, you try. OpenAI has content policies. They have filters. They have refusal mechanisms built into the model. But the history of content moderation tells us that at massive scale, stuff gets through. Deepfakes, misinformation, non-consensual imagery. The surface area for abuse just expanded enormously.
And we're heading into election season.
Yeah, free, high-quality image generation available to every person on Earth, 6 months before a major election cycle in multiple countries. I'm sure that'll be fine.
Your optimism is inspiring.
Look, I don't think OpenAI is being reckless. I think they've thought about this. But I think the competitive pressure to ship and grow is winning over the safety-first messaging they used to lead with. 2 years ago, OpenAI was the company saying, we need to be careful with this technology. Now, they're the company making it free and tweeting about server demand like it's a badge of honor.
The vibes shifted.
The vibes absolutely shifted. And that shift matters more than any single product decision because it tells you what the company optimizes for now versus what it used to optimize for.
So let me try to land this plane. The story everyone's covering is free AI images for everyone. Yay! The story underneath that is about market dynamics, creative commodification, data collection, and the slow erosion of the safety first ethos at the most important AI company in the world.
And the story underneath it is even simpler. When something is free, you need to ask what's being traded. And when OpenAI gives you free image generation, what's being traded is your attention, your preference data, your creative instincts, packaged up and fed back into a system that benefits OpenAI and its investors more than it benefits you.
Last question. If you're a listener right now and you're about to go try this out, which honestly, you probably should, because the technology is genuinely impressive, what's the one thing you should keep in mind?
But generating an image is not the same as having an idea. The tool can make anything you describe. The hard part was always knowing what to describe. Don't confuse access to production with access to creativity. Those are two very different things.
And maybe think twice before making everything look like a Miyazaki film.
Please. I'm begging you.
That's the show. We'll see you next time.